Welcome back to the Texas Longhorns Football Orange Bloods YouTube channel. I'm Ari Temkin, along with Geoff Ketchum, and we're going to be talking about the transfer portal today, as the future of Texas football is front and center now during this 4-game losing streak. Catch, but before we do that, let's tell everybody to give the video a thumbs up if you like what you see.
Like us, damn it!
We demand that you like us. You can wait around a few more minutes and just to be sure.
Like us too. I'm okay with that.
Also, if you're inclined, subscribe to the channel. It's what all the cool kids are doing. And ring the bell. That way you're always notified when you post new videos. You know, it's funny, I have a lot of friends that went to Texas. And so it's like, you know, you talk to them about, or they'll talk to you about Orange Blood stuff. And some of them, like, they know what's going on at Orange Bloods and they aren't even on Orange Bloods. And so it's like, here's your YouTube channel, a way for you to get some little free access to Orange Bloods without having to be a member of Orange Bloods.
Yeah. So subscribe to the channel, damn it. We're giving you the good stuff right now for free.
Also subscribe to Orange Bloods. I tell all my friends to do that too.
Yes. If for no other reason, then we are fantastic zoo animals on the site. You know, like if your thought is it's 2021, like what do I need with a message board? Trust me.
Yeah.
It's something else.
I mean, it really is. The entertainment value of the message boards never ceases to amaze me. And
hopefully we can amaze people with our portal discussion today. Because Ari, like, it legitimately, I think, will be the story that defines the Steve Sarkisian second year era at Texas. He's in a position where you can literally see this program kind of coming apart at the seams with regards to 4-5, 4-game losing streak. And suddenly there are internal issues this is a team that's not ready to compete and win a championship. And adding 25 freshmen next year doesn't change that outlook for Texas. So in order for them to take a step forward next year and for Sarkisian to get himself off of the hot seat, which he's going to be on going into year two, you don't lose 5 games at a minimum in your first season at Texas and think that the honeymoon continues into year 2. So really, this staff's ability to master this new vehicle that allows you to improve your football team potentially right away. Look no further than Mel Tucker at Michigan State, who is now kind of emerged as the poster boy for you can make the portal work for you and make your team better. I think it's so unorthodox that that a lot of coaches will push against it. Those coaches that are able to weaponize it right away, I think, stand to greatly enhance their programs and fast track it a little more than, say, the traditional sign 25 freshmen. A few of them show up and can play right away, but most of them need time to develop. This is a chance to upgrade and build up your roster with immediate help. Texas didn't use the portal this past year, I don't think, in a way that really allowed them to do that, which means in year 2, Sarkisian has to elevate this to an entirely new level. It can't just be 6th-year senior from your Alabama staff who, really hasn't helped the team at all. So they've got to do a better job of evaluation, and they got to find a way to win these recruiting battles, which they didn't really do in the portal a year ago. It was a little bit of a wake-up call where Texas was in on guys, they lost players to Missouri. And it was like, well, how the hell do you lose a kid to Missouri? And it's like, well, the kids in the portal, have different agendas and different needs. And in that case, there was an assistant coach connection, but like, they're not just begging to come to Texas. It's going to be some real work to win in the portal in a way that really does enhance the program moving forward next season.
Yeah, and there's a couple of things that you said there that I want to focus in on. So if the Bo Davis video has taught me anything, and it's reinforced something, which is Texas lacks leadership from its players. You need to have players that lead and hold other players accountable. Xavier Worthy on one of his videos with Serenity last week talked about you can't force people to care or try. And that's that's a true freshman saying we need players to lead here, and probably in a spot for Worthy that you're a true freshman. That's a tough spot to be in, to be the player leader on this football team. And so you're right.
I don't think he said that with, I think upon retrospect, he probably takes that back. I don't think he thought anything of it other than it was an answer to a question, but it really was quite revealing to hear that guy, that freshman say, can't make guys play hard.
Right. And I just, there's a series of things that you could see of this program that's like, yeah, this team lacks vocal leaders in that locker room. Coaches can't be the only leaders. You need, and the coaches will tell you this, like any coach will tell you this, you need players to lead. And, and it's clear that there's a void here. And so, yeah, that's, to your point, you bring in 25 freshmen, could you get leadership from them? Probably not. You're probably going to need to go to the portal. The other thing is, in recruiting is such an inexact science, but there is the blue chip ratio and the idea of like the more 4 or 5 stars you sign, the more likely you are to win a national title. So there's a direct line there. I'm going to be interested to see Ketch to track recruiting from the portal coming up, because like some of the best transfer players this year weren't big time guys when you rank the portal. Like Kenneth Walker, he was like, I remember one list that had him like the 95th best transfer available this past year. Hudson Hooker or Hendon Hooker, the Tennessee quarterback. If you had seen Hendon Hooker play at Virginia Tech, there was no way you thought this guy could be a legitimate starting quarterback at any level. Like, you know what I mean? Like, so, and now what he's doing at Tennessee, he's been incredible. And you bring up Michigan State, Tennessee also. Like Tennessee's a decent program this year. They basically turned over their roster through the portal because they lost a ton of guys, a lot of those guys to Oklahoma. And they basically had to like bring in a totally new class through the portal. And again, they're not great, but they're a lot further ahead in year one for Josh Heupel than I think a lot of people expected them to be.
They look like they could be an 0-12. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
They were ravaged to such a degree that when it happened, the thought was, well, Tennessee's going to be non-competitive.
Right.
And they haven't been good, but they have been competitive in ways that I give that first year coaching staff credit. Like it's not a complete wash away. And that's what that program looked like. It might be on the verge of having it happen to it. And, I think that this is just new, and new scares coaches.
Yep.
I mean, Steve Sarkisian at his press conference on Monday was talking about a built-in desire to have his players block out social media. And my reaction to that was, that sounds like an old person.
Right. That's not going to happen.
That sounds like something you and I would say, right? Like, oh, well, I don't do that whole TikTok thing. Like, I'm completely on top of myself. I don't really get into the Instagram thing, or you bail on Facebook. Like, we're talking about kids now. This isn't going backwards. Like, my completely unrelated to this, my daughter on Sunday night was like, I made a TikTok video today with my cousin. She's 7. I didn't even ask to see it. I'm sure it was harmless, right? Like, what are you getting? I'm sure there was some weird dance thing. Or like, my kids know Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. They think it's so cool that you and I do YouTube videos.
You're exactly right. Like, my kids are more amazed that I do YouTube videos than I'm on the radio. And I'm like, you realize anybody, you're right. It is crazy.
Like, I know you guys are impressed with this whole YouTube thing, but like, I've done some other things that you guys can be proud of, in addition to the fact that like any bootlegger can make a YouTube video.
Anybody can post to YouTube.
Like, we'd have more YouTube followers if I just reacted to like Chris Stapleton videos. Like,
we should
do. It is what it is. So I heard Sarkisian talk about it this week, and I was like, I wasn't even trying to be critical. I was kind of poking fun at like this reality of like, there are guys in our 40s. We don't think we're old, but there's a mastery of, and these kids have grown up in social media in a way that like somebody in our age group just isn't going to completely understand. the thing that they can check out when it's the only thing they've ever known. Again,
Right.
and I don't mean to sidetrack us, but it's an
That's a great
example
point.
of like change is hard. And that Mel Tucker was so aggressive and didn't just rely on recruiting rankings. I think they took 20 transfers, but I think 25% of those came from non-major Division I schools. So he was, for those that might be watching the videos from the state of Texas, that's maybe dipping into a Sam Houston State or a McNeese State or that next level down, and which is something that I think Texas needs to be doing more of. And it's hard to go find an offensive lineman that you think can play in the Big 12 in the Southland Conference, but you can find players. And this is a Texas team that needs help all over the field, and the ability to build a side of the program that follows the transfer portal every bit as seriously as recruiting. That is the wave of the future. And the coaches that figure it out are going to be the ones that have a lot of success, I think, moving forward. Sarkisian on the fly has to go all in on this. He has to immerse himself with who's in today. Every meeting's got to start with who's in the portal today. Who are we contacting in the portal today? And it's going to require a plan that's going to require some flexibility, because I think one of the real interesting things about where Texas is they're going to need so Texas is going to take a 25-man recruiting class. They are, as of today, at 83 scholarships. They've got 19 seniors. So on paper, they'll need 4 bodies of attrition to get under the 85 if they take 25, which means if you're saying Texas needs to take 10 guys in the portal. In order for that to happen, they'll need 14 players to likely leave the program before the summer or summer-ish, so that you have an idea of exactly what you have. Now, normally attrition is a dirty little word in recruiting. Or in program building. It's like, if you have too much attrition, your program will be a dumpster fire because you can't keep losing guys. But even in Mac Brown's best years, from 2000 through 2009, let's say, Texas as a football program averaged more than 10 departures every year. And over the course of the last 20 years, I think there's only been 2 or 3 seasons where they didn't have double-digit attrition.
And that's guys leaving and transferring.
That's leaving for anything. That means they flunked out of school. That means they got arrested. That means they transferred. That means anything that opens up a scholarship. And I think the good news for Texas is that historically, hitting those numbers hasn't proven to be difficult, but it always comes with a bit of a shrug shoulder because you don't want to do it.
Right.
I think we may see a Texas football pro, and the Bo Davis video.
Right. That's what I was going to say.
Literally the perfect example of this, because he implores them in the video 3 separate times in 40 seconds, take your ass to the portal.
Peace.
Go to the portal. Go to the portal. Like, he's telling them. And I think if you're a Texas fan, everybody will get hyped up about like, hey, at least somebody's as pissed as we are about the losing. I would say very low key, the most exciting thing about that, if you're a Texas football player or fan, is that coach didn't just say that enough. He didn't just make that up. He didn't walk into the bus and scream portal 3 times like he's Cinderella trying to go to the ball on an epiphany. That is likely a buzzword. And the proof that the staff is talking about the need for some dead weight in this roster to go, I think it's highlighted in that clip. He just didn't tell them you have to care. He didn't just say, call them MFers. The message of that was, get out of this place, go.
Right.
And it is a striking contrast to what I think traditional team building at the collegiate level is. And now You could see Texas with 25 incoming freshmen, depending on, let's say 10. 35 out of 85 is a substantial number next year to have new, incoming talent. And the reality is, there's a world out there where maybe they lose 19 guys to the portal this year. And you're talking about it's a second recruiting class.
Right.
And they don't all have to be seniors. Like this idea that you're going to stack your classes disproportionately and have yourself in a year where you've got 40 seniors. And what do you do when that happens? Well, it takes a smart person to do this. It will take a smart person to say, what we need to do is make sure we come away with 5 sophomores, because we've got 19 scheduled seniors next year. And we want to make sure that that's not 40 or 30. But you've got other years where, like, your sophomore class right now is 14.
Right.
You don't want to get yourself into a year where you need all of your attrition to cover your recruiting to get to 25. On paper, if you only have 14 going out and you take 25, you've got to invent 11 roster spots. That'll happen in attrition, but what would mean is in that year, you potentially would only have room for a few scholarships to use in a deal where I think by and large, you're going to want to see. I got to believe college coaches are going to, if it was me, I'm taking 10 transfers at a minimum every year, because one of the things this does, it helps eliminate some of the guessing.
Right.
Some of these guys have college film. When Texas took Ovi Ogofu and from Notre Dame, and that was a guy that played in the in a national semifinal. So they were like, well, look, that guy's playing at Notre Dame. They've got actual film. It's not the same thing as watching Class 3A Texas high school football and wondering, can a guy acclimate himself? So, some other person's trash can always be another man's treasure, but recruiting is a high risk, low reward kind of proposition. The average 4-star has an 80% chance of failure in terms of developing into an NFL player. Really, that number is closer to 85. You get the 3-stars, you're talking 90 plus. If you take someone through the portal that's slightly more proven, you're probably eliminating the risk factor, maybe cutting it in half. Like instead of 80% failure, now you're talking about a guy that, because he's at least proven that he can play at a certain level, you're eliminating that to 50% risk. And it's all about making the math eventually work out for you. Because it's as simple as this, Ari, if you take a guy that has a 90% risk, how many of those guys on the whole do you need to take before mathematically you hit one?
Right.
Like 10, 1 out of 10. Whereas if you're able to eliminate that risk through the evaluation of early college film and make it 50-50, suddenly you're talking about 5-star. I don't know where the math quite works yet.
Right.
But, everything that Texas has gotten through the transfer portal in the last year, you could see coming a mile away. Ovi Ogofu looked promising. Ray Thornton and Ben Davis didn't. And you watch Ovi Ogofu right now and you can go, God, I don't know that guy is a first or second day NFL player, but he will probably leave Texas in a position to get a chance to play on Sundays. That's so much more of a win than your average recruit who you just can't say something like that about.
Well, and I think when you look at this specific team, but then also where can you have success in the portal? It's offensive and defensive line. Like they have needs there. But additionally, you can recruit well there, but those are positions that are basically impossible to step into as true freshmen and be successful right away because of the body styles of an 18-year-old versus some guys 23, 24 years old.
And JUCO's so hit or miss that people really don't even want to deal with that. So
right.
At worst, the transfer portal is an upgraded JUCO farm system, if you will. And, I think the key for Texas is going to be analysis. you're going to have to find some hidden gems. If you're doing this right,
right
right now who the studs are, say Division II, you know who they are. And if they're at positions that, if you're Texas and there's some behemoth offensive lineman at a sub level, you got to know that, because that guy's going to be wanted somewhere. And then you've got to be able to recruit. And I think that high school recruiting, I think we learned through the portal a year ago, it's not the same as recruiting high school level talent. These guys now have gone through a little bit of college, and what they're looking for is not hype train. They want to know what the depth chart is. They want to know day one, I show up, where do I fit in? And, I think that Texas struggled a little bit with its messaging last year. And look, Texas isn't a high. If you're a kid from Michigan, which is a bad example because Xavier Worthy comes from Michigan, right? But, if you're, let's say that there's an offensive lineman that just came into the portal yesterday from Clemson, a guy with starting experience. His name is Paul Tycho, it's Tchio. Class of 2020, played 9 games as a true freshman, 5 games this season, including 1 start. National top 125 guy. Sounds like that's the kind of guy that Texas would probably have some interest in. 6'5", 320, big dude. Good enough to get on the field at Clemson. You got to be able to convince the Clemson guy that Texas football is not a step down.
Yep.
Because if you're coming from Clemson, you're not trying to go, notches below. So it's really imperative that Texas be able to put together a story where they don't look like lesser programs, quite frankly, the way they are in major recruiting right now, when it's like a kid's choosing between Alabama, Ohio State, Georgia, and Texas. And it's hard for Texas to tell a story that completely belongs on the same level as some of these other programs. That's just where they're at right now. And they've got to be real. They've got to be aggressive. They can't allow themselves to get into April or May and not have some solutions. Like, there's a whole plan that needs to be in place. The Bo Davis video for me gives some hope that it's a conversation that's already existed, which means that they're at least in the infancy stages of making a plan, which is way better than I think they did this past offseason.
Well said. Mike Farrell does a fantastic job covering the portal for Rivals at portal.rivals.com. So you can check out the latest players and their transfer tracker
at Rivals Portal. Go the NCAA transfer portal page for Rivals is at Rivals Portal. Every name that comes in, even the scrubbiest of the scrubs. I mean, there'll be days when you're like, oh, look, some redshirt freshman from Marshall who was a 2-star that has never played in a college game is in the portal. And you'll be like, why is this on my feed? But then later that day, when the kid from Clemson, who's an offensive lineman, pops up, it's a good follow. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, well said. So go check out that. Mike Farrell does a fantastic job. Or you can just go to portal.rivals.com as well. Of course, keep it right here on Orange Blood's Texas Football YouTube channel. And make sure to subscribe, thumbs up, ring the bell. That way you're always notified when we post new videos. But for GK, Geoff Ketchum, I'm Ari Temkin. We'll be back next week for the same portal discussion. And we'll have some names for you as well. That's all coming up right here on the Orange Blood's Texas Football YouTube channel.